Part 4. Listen to an interview between a TV host and a gardener, named Melissa, about guerrilla gardening. As you listen, choose the correct answer for questions 18 to 24. You now have 30 seconds to look at the questions. Now listen carefully and indicate your answers.
Welcome to our show, My Green World. Melissa is a self-confessed guerrilla gardener, living in Los Angeles. She'll talk about guerrilla gardening, and why it's the perfect way to go green in urban areas.
Thank you for inviting me to your show, David. Well, in a concrete jungle like Los Angeles, guerrilla gardening is a way of adapting. An activist named John Finley believed that green spaces, and healthy produce, should be accessible to all, and that's what guerrilla gardening is all about. It's using unconventional tactics and classic gardening practices to turn little pockets of land, and unused or underutilized spaces into oases for city dwellers. Even if you're lacking in space and resources, you can still join the movement.
Melissa, just how does one go about joining the movement here in Malaysia?
First, find a space. Look around you. Do you have space for a garden? If your immediate answer is no, look harder. Gardens can inhabit a surprising number of spaces. Yards and extra green space are great for gardening, but rare in cities like LA and KL. Something I've really loved is sidewalk gardening. You can grow a lot of food in that tiny square footage.
What is sidewalk gardening?
A sidewalk garden occupies the green space between a property and the street curb in front. It's technically owned by the city and therefore public property, but it's also the home or business owner's responsibility. You'll have to follow a few rules to make sure you're not obstructing walkways or parking spaces, but little gardens and public spaces like these are guerrilla gardening staple.
That means anyone can plant on their sidewalk.
If you own the property connected to the parkway, then you're good to go. Of course, renters and employees will need to get permission from their property managers before planting. Raised beds can be built on top of concrete if there's enough space, and container gardens, those using pots, can live on concrete patios, fire escapes, or balconies. You can even put containers on a small corner of a flat roof, with permission from the property manager, of course.
How do you find water for the plants? I mean, if it rains, then the problem is solved. But what if there's a stretch of dry days?
It goes without saying that plants need water. Hand watering is adequate for container gardens, and can also work for sidewalk gardens. To set up a long-term garden curbside, sometimes we'll hook up to the main water source from the house, and trench along the side of the property, go under the sidewalk, and set up a drip system. You can look into Oyas, an old-school watering system that use buried pots to slow water drain.
How does one actually begin?
First, do your research. Arm yourself with knowledge before diving into the world of gardening. Reference gardening books, online resources including YouTube, and even consider taking a gardening class or two.
How does one decide what type of plants are suitable for sidewalk gardening?
When choosing what to plant in your guerrilla garden, think about what will thrive in that space. Consider size restrictions, as well as sources of sunlight. Herbs, for instance, thrive in containers, raised beds, and sidewalk gardens.
How does one ensure that the plants will survive?
Part of gardening is unpredictability. You can't control the weather, wind, or how your plants will react. With guerrilla gardening, sometimes your space may become unavailable, and you'll have to up and move. Even if you follow the rules exactly, things may not work out.
What else should we know about guerrilla gardening?
Be flexible. Sidewalk gardens are in public spaces, so people sometimes treat them as such. This can mean trash, dog poop, and more can end up in your garden. It also means passers-by may pick what you grow. But that's all part of the guerrilla gardening experience. Sharing is caring, right?
Right. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us, Melissa. Viewers, let's go out and give guerrilla gardening a go.
Now you will listen to the recording again. This is the end of part 4, now turn to part 5.